You woke up with a clear plan, a surge of morning motivation. Today was the day. You were going to be productive, focused, and finally make progress. You were going to tackle that one important project, the one that could change things. You sit down at your desk, everything perfectly arranged, ready to begin. The intention is there. The desire is real. But then, almost imperceptibly, the hours drift by. You find yourself lost in a sea of small, unimportant distractions. A quick check of email becomes an hour of inbox maintenance. A single notification leads to endless scrolling. Meanwhile, the important task remains untouched, looming in the background. At the end of the day, you look back at the wreckage of your good intentions, and a familiar heavy word comes to mind: lazy. You blame yourself for a fundamental lack of discipline. You see it as a failure of your character, a personal weakness you should be able to overcome. You feel guilty for wasting the day. You feel frustrated with this perceived weakness, wondering why it's so hard to just do the work. But what if this story you tell yourself, this narrative about being lazy, is fundamentally wrong? What if it overlooks a powerful, invisible biological process happening inside your body and brain? A process driven by a single, potent hormone, cortisol. That feeling of being unable to start, like hitting a wall before you've even begun. The magnetic pull toward easy, low-effort distractions that offer immediate relief. The sense of mental fog that makes complex tasks feel impossible. These are not necessarily signs of personal failure or a weak will. They are symptoms. They are measurable signals of a specific physical state, a biological reality that hijacks your best intentions. We can give it a name: the cortisol trap. And understanding it reveals that this struggle has very little to do with willpower, and everything to do with biology. Cortisol is a steroid hormone. It's the final step in a chain reaction known as the HPA axis, your body's central stress response system. When your brain perceives a threat, the hypothalamus releases a signal, which tells the pituitary gland to send another signal, which finally tells your adrenal glands to release cortisol. Your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidneys, release it as your primary alarm system. This system evolved for a very specific purpose: short-term survival. In a crisis, it spikes heart rate, floods glucose for instant energy, and sharpens your senses to fight or flee. After danger, levels are meant to return to normal. A negative feedback loop tells the brain to shut off the alarm. But the modern world presents persistent psychological pressures, not brief physical threats. Your brain often does not distinguish a predator from a looming deadline or a stack of unpaid bills. When stressors never end, the alarm never shuts off. The feedback loop breaks, and your system keeps pumping out cortisol day after day. This is chronic stress. Like running an engine in the red, systems begin to wear. The most critical impact is on your brain. It disrupts sleep, affects digestion, and can weaken your immune system. Most immediately, it impairs your ability to think, plan, and act. The prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, runs reasoning, planning, problem-solving, and impulse control. When cortisol is normal, it manages attention and guides behavior. But high cortisol signals immediate danger and actively suppresses the PFC. The CEO is sent offline. But how exactly does cortisol do this? It hijacks another critical chemical: dopamine. Dopamine is the molecule of motivation. It drives your desire to pursue goals and gives you the energy to start and sustain effort. When cortisol floods your system, it directly interferes with dopamine signaling in three ways. First, it speeds up dopamine clearance. Cortisol tells the brain to produce more dopamine transporters, which act like tiny vacuums, pulling dopamine out of the synapse faster than usual. Less dopamine is left to send a signal. Second, it boosts dopamine breakdown. Cortisol increases the activity of enzymes that metabolize dopamine, further reducing its availability. And third, it reduces receptor availability. Cortisol triggers a process that causes dopamine receptors on the surface of your neurons to retreat inside the cell, making them temporarily unavailable. There are fewer places for dopamine to land and deliver its motivational message. To be clear, cortisol doesn't kill dopamine. It dampens dopamine signaling by speeding clearance, boosting breakdown, and temporarily reducing receptor availability. The result is a weakened go signal from your brain. It becomes biologically harder to initiate tasks, and your brain defaults to seeking immediate, low-effort rewards. This is the cortisol trap. When the prefrontal cortex is offline, your brain changes strategy. Complex, effortful goals pause. You default to easy, quick reward actions. Your brain conserves energy for a threat it believes is present. Reach, open, scroll. Each new post, picture, or clip gives a tiny novelty hit. It is the perfect low-effort loop for a stressed brain. Watching short videos, flipping channels, comfort snacking. These soothe for minutes, not hours. They do not lower cortisol meaningfully. Pressure rebounds, often worse. Time spent on easy loops is time stolen from essentials. Stress increases, cortisol spikes again. PFC suppression deepens, starting gets harder. Stress, avoidance, more stress. You are fully caught in the cortisol trap. Willpower shaming backfires. It is the wrong tool for a biological state. Willpower is a PFC-managed finite resource. Shame is stress. Stress raises cortisol. Self-blame tightens the trap. Reframe. You are experiencing a physiological response. Replace guilt with curiosity. This is the turning point. Escaping the cortisol trap does not require heroic willpower or a radical life overhaul. The path forward is not about fighting harder. It's about signaling safety to your nervous system. We will use a series of small, simple, repeatable actions. Their goal is singular: lower chronic cortisol levels. As cortisol drops, your prefrontal cortex, the seat of your executive function, comes back online, restoring your ability to plan, focus, and act. First, and most critical, get morning sunlight exposure within 30 to 60 minutes of waking. Aim for 10 to 15 minutes on a clear day, or 20 to 30 if it's overcast. This must be done outside. Viewing light through a window or wearing sunglasses filters out the specific wavelengths your brain needs. This light exposure directly hits specialized receptors in your eyes, sending a powerful signal to your brain's master clock, the SCN. This anchors your circadian rhythm. It triggers a healthy cortisol peak in the morning, which then tapers correctly throughout the day, improving dopamine signaling and setting you up for restorative sleep. Second, practice non-sleep deep rest. This is a 10 to 20-minute guided relaxation, ideally used midday or after a stressful event to interrupt the cortisol cascade. It rapidly lowers autonomic arousal and reduces cortisol. Think of it as a controlled system reboot that restores focus and clarity. Third, use deliberate, slow breathing to blunt acute stress in the moment. The fastest method is the physiological sigh. 2 quick inhales through the nose, followed by a long, slow exhale through the mouth. Repeat this 5 to 10 times. Or use box breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Do this for 2 to 5 minutes. Both techniques directly signal safety to your brainstem. Fourth, aggressively reduce micro-stressors. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Each buzz and ping is a tiny cortisol spike. Protect your sleep by avoiding screens for at least an hour before bed. Finally, when facing a task, use the 1-inch start. Break it down to an absurdly small first action, like opening a document or writing 1 sentence. Set a timer for just 60 to 120 seconds and begin. This bypasses the brain's threat response to large, overwhelming goals. Don't try to do everything at once. Choose 1 or 2 of these protocols to implement tomorrow. Schedule them. Start with a single small step. You are not broken or lazy. You are a human whose biology is caught in a feedback loop. And now you have the protocol to break free.